Good afternoon, everybody. We're now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Agnes. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of Planning Committee South. I am Councillor John Fisher, and I will be acting as chair in the absence of Councillor Seamus Bennett. The Planning Committee carries out duties and powers of East Suffolk Council as the local planning authority for the district, in line with both planning legislation and the Council's constitution. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today. Therefore, if the alarm sounds, please follow the green emergency exit signs to the nearest available exit. Do not use the lift and go to the fire assembly point at the entrance to Reduna Park at the front there. And do not re-enter the building until informed to do so by the evacuation coordinator or the fire service. A few introductory words. Please could I ask everyone present to ensure that their mobile phones are changed to silent mode or switched off. And will all those present please keep their microphones muted until they are called to speak. Please can I ask those in the rooms to make sure their microphones are positioned close enough to register your voice, and also to switch them off after you've finished speaking to avoid feedback. If members need to leave the room for a comfort break, you must ask the chair to adjourn the meeting. Otherwise, you will not be able to continue participating in the debate or vote on that item. And finally, to those in the public gallery, whilst you're seated in the gallery, you're there to observe, and there should be no clapping, calling out, cheering, etc. during the meeting, however high emotions run or however strongly you feel. In the unlikely event of any exclusion of the public, the meeting will continue to be live streamed, so would remain open to the public, even if some or all of the members of the public are excluded from the room itself. Can I now ask officers to introduce themselves, please?
Thank you, Chair. Joe Blackmore, Planning Manager, supporting case officers on all items today.
Katie Fowler, Principal Planner in the Major Sites team, speaking on item 6.
Catherine Scott, Principal Planner in the South team, and I'm here to support all items.
Mia Glass, Principal Enforcement Officer for agenda item 5. Thank you.
And Lois Whitnell, Assistant Planner for the South team, and speaking on 7 and 8.
Pip Alder, Democratic Services Officer, and I'm joined by my colleague Agnes Ogundiran. We also have Michelle online.
Do we have any apologies for today?
Apologies have been received from Councillors Bennett and Deacon, and Councillor Byatt is substituting for Councillor Deacon.
Thank you. Can I ask if anyone has any declarations of interest? If members have an interest, could they state whether it's a disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest, or non-registrable interest? Councillor Hedgley.
NRI item 8, I'm the ward councillor.
Thank you. Any other interest? Councillor Reeves.
Also NRI as ward councillor on item 7.
Councillor Nimney.
Same interest as Councillor Reeves.
Thank you. And Councillor Smithson.
Sorry, microphone.
District Councillor for Western Felixstowe.
Thank you. Any other interests? No. Okay, thank you very much. If members have been lobbied, could they please clarify or state I have had made no response? Anyone, any declarations of lobbying? No. Okay. That brings us to the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of July 26. Does anyone have any queries on those minutes? Any questions? If you're all happy with them, can I have a proposer? Councillor Hedgley, and a second. Councillor Daly. And a vote on to accept the minutes. Councillor Nimney, are you voting? Okay.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. Yeah. Thank you. Well, that with your vote, and that's unanimous. So the next item is a report from the Suffolk Enforcement, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to begin, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Mia Glass, and recently promoted into the principal role. Therefore, you're usually joined by my colleague Dominic, but I will attend as much as possible to be able to provide these updates for you. Just for you today is A4, the annex at Hill Farm Barn. An extension of time has been given for compliance until the 26th of September. Therefore, hopefully we'll be able to update you following that date. And A6, just as the period of time on the report has passed, that talks remain ongoing with the responsible parties to reach a solution before further formal action is considered. Happy to take any questions on any other matters.
Do any members? Sorry. Do any members have questions on the report, Councillor Newman?
Yes, C7, I see that appeals decisions were dismissed, etc. So what is the action that we are taking with regards to the old golf shop at Waldron Field, please?
So we still have the enforcement notice on that, which is pending. Let me just get the last update that was your reading. So the enforcement notice is still pending. They have another year till the 10th of June 2027 to be able to comply with the enforcement notice. So that just remains current and active, and we will revisit at the site after that date and take any appropriate action.
Okay, they haven't actually made any planning application.
I believe there may have been one that's come in recently. However, that hasn't changed the notice. The notice will run as is.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I don't know whether you're able to update on the Queen at Brandeston, which has been going on for 4 years.
Yes, thank you. The situation remains similar to the previous update that was given. There are very much ongoing internal discussions with our legal team that are taking place that can't be shared in full right now, but I can promise that they are very much ongoing. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions on the report? In that case, would someone like to propose the recommendation? Accepted. Councillor Nimney, seconded by Councillor Hedgley. Those in favour of accepting the report? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So, Joe, you wanted to report on some changes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just before I move on to the new NPPF that's covered in the update sheet, just to reflect Mia Glass's update. So Mia's recently moved into the position of Principal Enforcement Officer, and that's a lead role managing the enforcement team. So Mia started from an assistant role and moved up through the team, and I'm really glad to see her progression. We identified that we've got a really good enforcement team that do really good work, but we've never really had a lead enforcement officer that's solely responsible for managing that part of the DM service. And I'm really pleased to see Mia in that role, and her presence at all the planning committees to update on those things and engage with you as members, I'm sure will be welcomed and well received. The second part of my update is much more in respect of policy changes and just in advance of the applications on the agenda today being considered. So We had a brand new NPPF that was published on the 17th of August, right in the middle of the summer holidays, and a rather sudden announcement in terms of the timing of that. I think everyone's been scrambling around a little bit trying to get their heads around that. So the NPPF was first introduced in 2012, and this is, I'd say, the most significant update to that NPPF since that time, and it is quite a generational change in some ways. Fundamentally, the main thing to make you aware of, and this is reflected in the update paper that you will have received yesterday, is that the NPPF introduces national development management policies. So those are policies a bit like our local plan policies, but at a national level. They're not statutory, but they carry significant weight and of critical importance, is, I believe, phraseology for that. So the thrust of that is that where they're always a material consideration of critical importance, but where our local plan policies are inconsistent with those national development management policies, our local plan policies are given very limited weight in the consideration. Fortunately, the applications that you have before you today don't really have too much in the way of consequence with that recent NPPF publication. Katie and Lois, as case officers, have covered that in the update paper to make you aware of that. You need to have regard to those policies, but fundamentally the recommendations are exactly the same, and the analysis is very much similar to what's already in the published report. But just to make you aware of that, and I'm sure through the policy team we'll be briefing in more detail on the new NPPF as we get familiar with that and have to apply those national development management policies. And I think just to make members aware that there will be some cases where for a certain period of time, we've had local policies that we can always give full weight to it in planning consideration. The introduction of these national development management policies means that sometimes there will be tension between the two, and then the national development management policies are almost taking precedence. So it's a big change, but nothing to necessarily worry about. It's something that we'll need to brief you on and make sure that committee reports to you at upcoming meetings cover that off fairly. But I think as we've been doing with the setting out of the agenda items earlier in the process, if there's any questions around the application of policy on the detail of the scheme, how that interacts with the new NPPF, then please do reach out to us in terms of either the case officers or principals or myself if you've got any questions. So I'm happy, Chair, to move on to the main items now, if that's okay with you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, Councillor Daly.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. Yeah, so this sort of stronger national control and dictation from the centre over our planning system is, I think, something that should worry all of us very much, because it's going in tow with a lot of other planning changes to do with NSIPs as well as town and country, whereby the centre is taking more and more control over what happens. It's undemocratic, and it is taking the impetus out of the local voice, basically. So I think we just need to register the fact that this is very worrying. So can I just clarify then? So these changes were made very quickly, without consultation, and they were imposed on us immediately. Is that right?
Thanks, Councillor Daly. No, there was a detailed consultation that was carried out earlier in the year, and there was thousands of responses from the various authorities in response to that. So the government has been through the proper process there in respect of that consultation and taken on board that feedback. I know we as a council put a significant amount of work into reviewing that draft and feeding back on that. And some of the changes that have come in between the draft and the final version are, fairly significant. There's some good things to the new NPPF, I should say, that it's much clearer in terms of the layout. There's plan making policies that are separate. There's development management policies that are separate as well. It's laid out in a much more straightforward way. I think it's probably easier in some respects to apply those policies rather than just referring to paragraphs in the document. Probably the point I'd want to make, though, is that it doesn't take away all of that local control. I think what it's doing is, for some authorities, they're very, very old local plans. And so there will be a lot of inconsistency with national development management policies. Now, clearly, we're in the process of working on new local plans for East Suffolk, but even the existing local plans that we have in place are still relatively recent and up to date in that way. So I don't think we're going to be in a position where there's lots and lots of material conflict between local policy and national policy. But where that does arise, then clearly that is something where those national policies have that critical importance, and we have to give that more very limited weight to some local policies. But even in the application of those national policies, it's still about good planning judgment and applying those policies, and that isn't being taken away from anyone, either in this room or officer level.
Councillor Hedgley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I tend to agree with Councillor Daly and lack of democratic voice here. The local plan we voted for. The changes in the NPPF we didn't, and that is to our detriment, I believe.
Councillor Nimley, did you have a question?
Yes, because we're sat here today and we've got to take notice of, and thank you very much for the briefing document from the officers. Two questions really. Certainly our smaller parishes are very concerned about some of the changes that are coming their way, in that many of the smaller parishes, a development of 5 or 8 houses would be a big development, and it would appear we don't now have a voice in that. But when is it proposed that the council provides training on the changes between what we had and what we now have? Is there a programme for that coming? Thank you.
I had a conversation yesterday with our head of planning, Ben Warner, and colleagues in Democratic Services, and that's being programmed in for training to be set up in due course fairly soon, to cover not only the new NPPF and any differences between that and the previous version, but also the implementation of the National Scheme of Delegation and the committee reforms that we previously discussed at Strategic Planning Committee. So I can certainly sense that, you take all of those things together, it's big national change, and it is some of the most significant change, I would say, in national planning over the past decade or two. But we're trying to make sure we implement that in a very good way that retains that local influence, but in terms of the committee reforms and the scheme of delegation, retaining our referral panel influence in a way that many other councils aren't doing. So I think prior to the implementation of the National Scheme of Delegation on the 31st of October, there will be training that's undertaken in respect of both to keep you all up to date.
Thank you, Joe.
Can you remind me when the changes to the planning committee, in that we're having just the one, when will that be implemented? Will that be October or earlier?
So the regulations come into effect on the 31st of October. So after that stage, then all Schedule 1 applications are delegated, and then the committee changes come into effect from that date onwards. And potentially that could be the single planning committee that we discussed, and the certain kinds of applications only arriving at committee through the gateway process.
Thank you. There's no further questions on that. We'll move on to agenda item 6, the former Deedon High School, and Katie Fowler will be presenting this. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I will just share my screen. So the application is for a section 73 known as a variation of condition application. We're looking at 2 parts of this application. So we have a residential part and a leisure part. So I'll come on to explain the differences shortly. But the application is before the committee to determine, because the applicant and landowner is East Suffolk Council. So this is the application site. So it includes the land that is hatched and then the land outlined as red. So the access is off Garrison Lane. So if you can see my cursor on the screen, it looks quite small actually on the screen, so you might not just see that. But the road that's on the eastern boundary, that is Garrison Lane, and it's adjoined by residential properties to the north of Nursery Walk, and then to the south of Newry Lane. And then you have a land of open space to the west of the site with a public right of way going through it. So as you can see from the site plan, this school was the land was previously occupied by a school known as Stephen School. So that's what the kind of main bulk of buildings were. In the top north corner, you also had a sports hall, and then you obviously had the playing fields to the west of the site. So in 2021, a hybrid planning application was made, which granted permission for a full element and then an outline element. So the area that's hatched was granted outline plan permission for the leisure uses of cricket use and an indoor bowls club. And then the element that isn't hatched, but which had the school buildings, was granted full planning permission for the redevelopment of the site for residential use. There have been 2 variation of condition applications that have since been made on the residential aspects. So these were granted in 2023 and 2024. So this is the 3rd one that we've received. And then the leisure element, so that which is hatched, that was also granted reserved matters consent last year. So you may recall this application site coming to committee, I think it was May last year, and that was the reserved matter details. So this is the latest aerial photograph that we have, and just shows the residential being built out. So you can see where that's starting to replace the former school buildings, and then the playing pitch and the former sports hall, which has been retained. So in terms of the proposal before us, because it's a variation in condition, it is slightly complicated in the details. So I'll try to do a high level approach, but this is the table that's on the screen is extracted from the officer report at paragraph 3.3. So if you want to have a look at that whilst we're going through that, hopefully should help provide clarity over what conditions are being varied. But to start with is the residential. So the residential is looking to make amendments to the roof design. So that will involve the variation of the approved plans to amend those roofs, and then the drainage strategy as well to accommodate for those roof changes. So that's resulting in a loss of green roof and PV panels as a result of those changes. The second element is the leisure proposal. So this is also looking to amend the roof design of the cricket pavilion. So there's a number of conditions which that relates to, which are shown on the screen. And that would involve alterations to the drainage strategy as well. And then the second part of the leisure proposal is to extend the hours of operation. So it was approved that the cricket use could start from 10 a.m, but what's being proposed is that it starts from 9 a.m. So just to go through those changes in a little bit more detail, I'll go through the residential first. So on the screen, and what you'll see going through these next few slides, we've got the approved plans versus the proposed. So this is all the roof design changes to do with the residential. So you'll see that generally there's kind of loss or repositioning of green roof. Sometimes there's introduction of solar panels, for example, in this one, and then sometimes there is a loss of solar panels. So this apartment block is block A, which is on the northern edge of the residential. I've just circled that in red in the top right hand corner of the screen. This is located next to the leisure car park, and it's not directly adjacent to any existing residential properties, but it is within reasonable proximity to those on Garrison Lane. The roof is not visible from the public realm or any residential properties, and the approved plans approved 82 meters squared of green roof, and what's proposed is 26 meters squared of green roof. It didn't propose any solar panels, and sorry, didn't approve any solar panels, and what's proposed is 18 solar panels. And then this is just a photograph taken from the roof of block A, so you can have a bit of an idea of what that actually looks like. So block B is located just south of block A. Again, it's not located adjacent to any of the existing residential properties, and the roof is not visible from the public realm. It was approved that there would be 210 meters squared of green roof, and it's proposed of 76 meters squared. It didn't approve any solar panels, but 28 solar panels are proposed. And then again, you can just see what this looks like actually in implementation. So block C, just south of block B, again, not adjacent to any existing residential properties, and the roof again is not visible from the public realm. The approved plans showed 183 meters squared of green roof, and it's proposed to have 68 meters squared. The approved plans on this one did also show 40 solar panels, and we've got 26 proposed. And then here's the photos from the roof. And then the last apartment block is block D. This one is adjacent to residential properties on Newry Avenue. And But again, it's height, due to the height and parapet, it's not visible. The roof is not visible from any public vantage points or the nearby residential properties. The approved plans approved 89 metres squared of green roof, and it's proposed to have 59 metres squared of green roof. 0 solar panels were approved, and 18 solar panels are proposed. And then these are the photos from that roof. So we also had some dwellings which were approved as part of this scheme. So these dwellings were known as house type 01. There were 4 in total which were approved, and they're adjacent to the dwellings on Garrison Lane. So cumulatively across all 4 properties, it was approved that there'd be 170 metres squared of green roof. It's now proposed to have 48 metres squared. There were also 24 solar panels, and it's now proposed to have 12 solar panels. So these photos were taken from 2 different angles. So the photo on the left was taken from the apartment block of Block A on the balcony. So you can see that the roof is not visible from any public points. The second photo, so on the right-hand side, was taken from the roof. So you can actually start to see what that looks like, but that isn't actually visible from any balconies or windows within the apartment blocks. And you can get an idea for the relationship with the properties in Garrison Lane, and can see that due to the height of the building and then the parapet, it means that it's very, very unlikely that there would be any visibility from those properties onto the roofs. So house type 2, there's again 4 of these properties. 2 are located adjacent to Newry Avenue and 2 located to 1 property on Garrison Lane. It was approved across all 4 properties that there would be 170 metres squared of green roof. 110 metres squared of green roof, and it's proposed to be 72 metres squared of green roof. There were 28 solar panels approved, and now are 12 solar panels proposed. There's no public vantage point at all of this roof, so Kia, who are the developer, have sent photos just to give an idea of what that looks like. House type 3 is located directly off Garrison Lane, so it fronts directly onto that street, but again, the roofs are not visible from the public realm. There's 4 dwellings of this house type 2, and it was approved that there would be 223 metres squared of green roof, and it's currently proposed 56 metres squared of green roof. There were 36 solar panels approved, and it's now proposed for 12 solar panels on that roof. Again, no public viewpoints of this one, so Kia have sent photos of that too, and these were taken in July 2025. So the last house type is house type 4. Again, there's 4 dwellings of this. They're located on the southern boundary adjacent to the properties on Newry Avenue. It was approved that there'd be 205 metres squared green roof across all 4 properties. It's now proposed to be 46 metres squared. There were 36 solar panels approved, and it's now proposed to have 12 solar panels. So this one you can see from the roof of apartment block D. Again, you won't be able to see it from the balconies, but just to be able to give you a bit of an indication of what that looked like. And you can see that relationship with the properties on Newry Avenue as well, which is on the far right hand of the screen. So moving on to the leisure proposal. So the changes to leisure have been set out at paragraph 10.17 of the officer report if you want to have a look at those in more detail. So as a reminder, the leisure parcel was granted outline consent as part of the hybrid application, and then came in as a reserve matters application last year to agree those finer details. In the reserve matters application, the drainage strategy approved a green roof to the indoor bowls club and the cricket pavilion. And then, as you'll see on the screen, condition 4 required the details of the green roofs to be agreed, and condition 2 required the cricket pavilion to carry out the development in accordance with those details. But however, it came to light after the application was approved that the roof was not designed to hold the weight of a green roof. And so a new drainage strategy had to be looked at, which I've just extracted on the next slide. So this shows where I've circled in red that it's proposed to provide raised planter rain gardens instead of the green roof. So essentially it would serve the same function of the green roof in terms of it would clean the water slightly better, but it was only acting as kind of slowing down the drainage, which the rain gardens would be able to serve the same purpose as the green roof was as approved. The second element of the leisure proposal is the change in operation hours. So the Reserve Matters application approved the operation hours of 10 a.m. till 11 p.m. But after the application was approved, the cricket club actually said that they would prefer to start earlier on site due to be able to set up before games and to be able to start practicing. And they asked if they would be able to start that at 9 a.m. So a revised noise assessment has been submitted to address that. So these are the key material considerations. As it's a variation of condition application, we're only looking at those which are relevant to the amendments being sought. So if I just briefly go through the residential ones to start. So the first key consideration was design. So because there was limited to no visibility of the roofs, the changes would not be considered to impact the overall design quality or visual amenity of the scheme. In relation to ecology, the green roofs did not form part of the biodiversity or ecological enhancements of the scheme, and the ecology officer has raised no objection. In relation to the drainage strategy, the green roofs did form part of the drainage strategy, but acted as an additional treatment. The amended drainage strategy, which demonstrates that the reduction in green roofs does not impact the SUDs, as it was just a treatment of the water rather than a requirement of the actual drainage strategy. And the LLFA has raised no objection as a result. And then lastly, for the residential was sustainability. So at the time that the hybrid application was approved in 2021, our sustainable construction policy was still relevant, which required a TER reduction. So this requires a 20% reduction in CO2 below the TER, which is set out in the building regs. And the approved development back in 2021 predicted a 59.6% reduction in CO2. And the proposed calculations for this, even taking into account the revisions, actually shows that that reduction would be taken down further to 76.28% below the CO2 targets within building regs. So it remains compliant with that policy. So overall, the residential changes would remain policy compliant and would not alter the acceptability of the scheme. In relation to leisure, the first key consideration again was design. So the proposed changes to the pavilion were not considered to have a negative impact upon the overall appearance, and the proposal would remain well designed. In relation to ecology, the green roof again did not form part of biodiversity or ecological enhancements, and the ecology officer has raised no objection. In relation to the drainage strategy has been amended due to the removal of the green roof, and the raised plant and rain gardens proposed would offer the same benefits and role in the SUD strategy as the green roof, and the LLFA have raised no objection to that. In relation to residential amenity, the main consideration of this was the operation hours changing and the impact of noise on neighbours. As I said, a noise assessment has been submitted with the application, and that shows that no unreasonable impact would occur from allowing the cricket use to operate from 9 a.m. instead of the 10 a.m. as approved. Environmental Protection have reviewed that and raised no objection. So conclusion for leisure is that the proposed changes would remain policy compliant and would not alter the acceptability of the scheme. So the application is recommended for approval subject to a number of conditions. So the conditions on the hybrid planning consent remain relevant, so that's for the outline and full. The conditions imposed on Reserve Matters consent remain relevant. There are some changes to the conditions that were approved, to the conditions that are relevant to the amendments sought through this application, and there are some changes to the conditions where details have been discharged through discharge of condition applications since those applications were granted consent. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Katie. Before I ask others for questions, LFA, what does that stand for?
Sorry, Lead Local Flood Authority.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Daly.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so on the residential side of it then, I just got a big question really. Why? Why are we cutting our green roofs and cutting our solar panels? Because we're the applicant, East Suffolk Council is the applicant. Do you know what? We're green-led GLI administration and we're into solar panels and green roofs. Can you just answer that question? Why are we making these changes then?
Yeah, so as far as I understand it, it's because the scheme where it's passive house required additional ventilation and kind of vents coming out of the roof that hadn't been accounted for when the approved plans were drawn up and then subsequently approved. So since then, that has been further understood as it's gone through obviously construction, building regulation drawings and things like that. that then that came to light that actually where they needed these vents, it meant that they couldn't execute the green roofs and solar panels in the way that it had been approved. The applicant is intending to speak, so they might be able to expand on that further, but that's what my understanding of why the changes have been provided.
Councillor Newman.
You went through the Faro rate, the changes, particularly to the houses where they're being reduced to a third of what they may have been. What is the overall reduction from the approved? How many panels were there and how many panels will we end up with, and the consequence of those on the residents of these dwellings?
Yeah, so
Mike, yours.
Sorry.
thank you. So the net loss of green roofs is approximately 821 meters squared, and the loss of solar panels is approximately 26.
So how many were there at the beginning?
I would have to, the information is at 10.4 of my report. I haven't calculated the total that there were, just the net loss. So I'd have to do that exercise to be able to give the exact answer.
It would be useful.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I had why, we all asked why. I think I have a concern. I mean, not understanding that the weight of the green roof, I mean, most of us who get garden sheds are made aware of the weight of green roofs. And so there is a kind of, I have a lack of confidence about some of the changes. This won an award before a spade was put in the ground, and yet we've had several changes to doors, to windows and all sorts. There is a kind of, for members, that's, you know, so how can we have confidence that when we are presented with a design that actually we're being given things which are
Councillor Smith, at the moment we're asking for.
Well, I'm asking that question, how can we have confidence?
Clarity, and that the officers will be presenting it, and you can ask them. That probably would be better placed than Kate to answer that. Any other points of clarification? Anyone? Sorry. Okay. That brings us to public speaking. Is that right? Louise.
Yeah.
Berry,
Yeah.
is speaking, please. Thank you. It's the right-hand button on your microphones when you're speaking, and you have 3 minutes. Is that right?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am the planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant. This lot is being shared between myself and project representatives from the residential and leisure teams. We feel the office's report provides a comprehensive and robust assessment of the proposal, which is to vary the wording of the selection of planning conditions to ensure this exciting project remains deliverable and continues to secure the community benefits associated with the original planning approval, which was for a high-quality mixed-use scheme of new housing and community sport and recreation facilities. The committee report confirms that the changes that are required to make this deliverable are all in accordance with the relevant planning policy, particularly in relation to sustainability, energy, and design quality. The applicant has worked proactively with the local planning authority prior to the submission of the Section 73 application, responding to all technical queries when required. This engagement has continued up until this point, working with the planning team to respond to all queries raised. I feel it is important to note that all statutory consultees have not objected to this Section 73. That includes the Local Flood Authority, Environmental Protection, East Suffolk Ecology, and Felixstowe Council. Overall, the scheme continues to deliver energy efficient homes and a sustainable construction approach, while supporting East Suffolk Council's leisure objectives and wider well-being goals. We hope you can support this proposal. I will now pass you over to Keir Residential.
Thank you. I'm James Mann, a design manager for Key Construction. As covered in the early supportive and positive presentation, we are pleased to confirm that this application continues to meet and exceed many of the planning policy requirements. We can confirm from our calculations that the scheme is now predicted to achieve a greater reduction in CO2 emissions below the target emission rate than first anticipated. And with these updated calculations, the reduction increases from 59.6% to 76.28%, significantly greater than the 20% reduction required in the policy. Likewise, drainage design and ecological aspects and requirements are also unaffected by this application. Finally, as recently communicated with our building control and other partners, our external consultant confirms that the design and construction remain on target to meet Passive House certification specification requirements for the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank you for the chance to speak. I'm here on behalf of Kia and the leisure team. So yeah, I don't have much time to speak, but I think, you know, we're happy to field questions after this, but the purpose of the project in the first place was to make sure that we're able to make some changes and to make sure that the project remained deliverable, and to make sure that we keep on track with the sustainability objectives, and to ensure that we're still Passive House compliance. So with all that in mind, the changes are you know, badged as minor because Section 73 is technically a minor material alteration, but equally they're pretty significant, they're complex and they're critical to the success of the overall scheme. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions? Councillor Daly.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that, all three. Yeah, can you just clarify then that initial question I made to the officers, the why side of it? What exactly are the reasons for losing the green roofs and changing the solar panel mix? If you could just explain that, that would be very helpful. Thanks.
We'll try, and I think the planning officer alluded to this earlier, so we'll try to expand on that. But when the original application was approved, there were lots of predictions involved, and then obviously when you actually start on site, you begin to see the technical challenges in real time. So yeah, there's the point about, in order to be Passive House compliance, you do need those additional vents. The original approved drawings did not show that, so that had to be declared. And as soon as we discovered that, we got in contact with planning and we made sure that we could regularize that as best as we could. Hence, we're here today. So there's that issue about there being a prediction at the very beginning, and then what happens in reality. So what we've tried to do is find that balance between, you know, making sure that we don't lose the essence of the original scheme. We continue to make it deliverable because that's what we're here to do, but also make sure that we're honouring as best as we can those original principles that we promised at the beginning as part of the original consent. So I think really the critical figure here, and I think this should help reassure everybody, is that the original prediction was that there would be a 59% reduction in CO2. In reality, that's going to be 76. So actually there's an improvement, and I don't think we should lose sight of that when we come to the debate following this. So hopefully that answers the question. So yeah, green roofs unfortunately had to be sacrificed. They're still present, but ultimately there is a significant improvement in terms of the delivery of sustainability benefits on site. So for us, that's a significant planning gain that should outweigh any potential harm that could be arising from this project. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, thank you for that. It is reassuring. It's great that the carbon cut has gone up to 70-odd%. So yeah, I mean, it would have been useful to the committee to have had this up front, really. The reason is that because of the venting and the whole dynamics of the project need that extra venting, therefore these changes were required. So yeah, I mean, that satisfies me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nimley.
Yeah, I'm rather worried that in that passive housing would require these vents. That would have been surely a part of the design spec at the beginning of the project. I find it really worrying that the residents of houses 1, 2, 3, and 4 are actually going to end up with probably from a third to a half of the efficiency and cost saving that the solar panels that they could have had, which apparently now they can no longer have because you've got to redesign to get the vents in. And I'm sort of surprised that the structure's there. Are you actually having to cut through the roof to get these vents into the system? I mean, it sounds like quite a massive undertaking that if there's been an oversight, it's a big one. And the other concern that I have is surely it's known what sort of structure you would need to support a roof, a garden roof. I find it odd that at this stage, you're back to say the roof that is to be built or has been built is inadequate for the planning consent that you're given. Thank you.
Response to that?
Yeah, I'll try, and I might have to share this answer with my colleague James, because James is from Kier and he's probably got better kind of technical knowledge of the construction process. So James, I might hand over to you in a second if that's all right, please. But to begin with, I think it goes back to the original. So fortunately, we're in a place where we can say we weren't involved in the original scheme. So I'm not quite sure what happened there 5 years ago, but it got approved, and we're in a situation where we're having to deliver, and there's a conflict. There's a conflict between what's been promised at the beginning and what we're actually able to do in real life. And yes, there's a load-bearing issue. Yes, there's a ventilation issue, but from my kind of planning perspective, if you were to, and I hate to do this, but if you're looking at the kind of the two things in balance, if you're looking at green roofs and you're looking at the benefits of solar panels, I think ultimately we're in a place now where we're getting more planning gain from the project than we would have done, because yet we've reduced green roof, but the drainage strategy that's been submitted demonstrates that we're still in accordance with planning policy, and we're not. I think there's a line in the committee report 11.1 that says the changes would not materially diminish the quality of the approved development. I think that's a pretty poignant and powerful conclusion, because yes, we've made changes, and yeah, we would have loved to have kept the original drawings, but in order to meet the compliance and in order to keep this sustainable and keep it exciting and as intact as possible, we've had to make some hard decisions. And unfortunately, that means reducing the amount of green roof, but having better planning gain as a result of what's been put in place. So I still think it's a good and positive outcome ultimately, but I can totally understand why the questions are being asked. But James, is there anything more to add there in terms of actual, like, with your knowledge of the construction process, please?
Yeah, I think the original scheme that you may have seen, a concept, contained probably indicative areas of green roof, and through its various iterations, it's had solar panels indicated on some or all of the blocks of apartments. And I think during design development, you've gone into those technical details to ensure that passive house has been achieved, and there's quite rigorous requirements for the passive house in terms of thermal, power usage. And so the retention of solar panels now to each and every one of the units ensures that they all benefit from the PV panels, but they're designed to feed in the most optimum way into the passive house standards to ensure those are achieved, and you get your certification for passive house. And I suppose with the green on the roof, it's not a requirement of passive house. It's very nice to have. So then looking at the detailed designs of the roof, you've then got regulations in terms of perimeters to abutments where you can't have the green roof right to the edge, which is what the original plan showed. So in terms of ensuring that the roof installation is to the correct and required standards, that it achieves its 20-year guarantee. Some of the roof green areas have had to be pinched for margins And with the ventilation introduced, that's pinched it a little bit further. But the primary driver was the retention of solar panels to each and every one of the blocks, so that all of the properties will benefit from their individual PV.
Thank you, James. Yes, Councillor Lindsay. James, would you like to?
In that house one is going to have half of the solar panels it would have, the 3 and 4 are going to have a third. Will the solar panels have battery backup? Is that a part of the installation, or are they just solar panels feeding straight into the system?
No, there's no battery backup. The solar panels will feed primarily to the property, and if there's any surplus, then they export. So you might have a point at which you could put more panels on it, but the property would benefit. The excess would be exported. So you've got the optimum number of panels to assist in the reduction in CO2 emissions on each of the plots.
But it would be factual, would it not, that if there was a battery backup for the purchasers of houses 1, 2, 3, and 4 types, they would actually have much lower running cost over the lifetime of the solar installation. Thank you.
I mean, you potentially, I probably can't comment on that. I'm not an expert in that. That's, as I think as Indy alluded to, the scheme goes back some 4 or 5 years. So I think with advances in technology, some of the panels that are on this roof are now better performing than ones that you might have. So in a sense, whilst you see a reduction of panels, the panels' performances increases relative to their size. So you've got Bethel panels and you could have bought 3 or 4 years ago. And therefore, in very simple terms, you could argue you might be able to have less on and still achieve the same performance.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions of speakers? Councillor Byatt.
Thank you. I'd also got battery storage down as well. I'm just surprised that that would be such a giveaway to our tenants if they could have long-term battery storage. Anyway, grey water. What's the ultimate intention for any grey water on the site? Are we going to have any retention for that, or is that just going to go straight back into the mains drainage? Thank you.
No, there's no grey water provision required on the site. That wouldn't feed into Passive House. Again, it's desirable. I think where we talked about the lead local flood authority, that's with regards to rainwater or stormwater drainage. I think has been checked and asserted that changing the areas of the green roof or their reduction doesn't have any impact on that. It acts as a temporary slowing down of any wash off site, but the site is designed in conjunction with LFA in terms of it has swales and modern forms of retention, so the water doesn't go off site, it's retained on site and put back into the ground. That's just the storm water.
Do we have any other questions of speakers? Okay, thank you very much. Really good. You can retire to your seats.
Thank you.
Does anyone else give a speak? No. So, do you members have any points of clarification following the public speaking? Of the officers to make any clarification. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, we'll hand over to Katie Powell, who's got a few points I think, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to come back to Councillor Ninny's question. I've done my calculations for you. So what was approved was 1,272 metres squared of green roof. What's proposed is 451 metres squared of green roof. So that's cumulatively across it all. Yeah, that's maths I haven't done again. Maths is not my forte, that's why I'm a planner. And then what was approved was 164 solar panels, and what's proposed is 138 solar panels.
Thank you, Katie. Are there any other points of clarification that officers want to make? Just one. This is for officers.
There was discussion that the roof wouldn't be strong enough in the leisure complex to carry. Do we know what the difference is between the roof that they are building or proposed to build compared to? Is it double its weight or is it, does anybody have any idea at all?
I don't have the calculations for that. I think Tim's also saying he doesn't know the exact calculations for that. It was something we discussed at the time, and it was even when the application was coming to committee, we were unsure whether or not that was something they were going to be able to facilitate, or if a new drainage strategy was going to have to be reviewed. But obviously, like I said, it hasn't got additional benefits. I think we'd probably be more concerned about it if it had kind of biodiversity or ecological benefits with it. But what was approved was purely from a drainage perspective. And actually, like I say, the rain gardens that are proposed are of equal. They're going to contribute equally to the sub strategy. So then, yes, so they're not going to. There's not going to be a negative impact in terms of that. The only thing that will be different is the visual perspective. So you'll have raised planters instead of a green roof, but yeah, there wouldn't be any other benefits to that green roof outside of the sub strategy anyway.
That brings us on to debate then. Whose ward is this in?
Yeah, this is where
Yeah.
the questions.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, so what I will say is the variation of conditions, it's a bit dispiriting for members because we are making decisions based on the good faith, if you like, in design, planners, etc. And then there are a couple of things here. One is the weight of the roof on that, which I find astounding, given that most people, as I said, know that you can't have a garden shed unless you've got major structures. So I'm surprised that that was designed in a way and that's only just come to light. That surprises me. So it's about us having confidence that when we're presented with a design, that it's actually competent, yeah, because we've had doors changed on this, we've had windows changed because it couldn't be built in the way that it was designed, and it just worries. How do we get confidence that what we're being presented with, that we are passing and saying, yeah, that's okay, is actually okay? I mean, we've had people come, oh, they made an honest mistake, they've built the house twice the size it's meant to be. Either we have builders who can't measure, or, what is it? Or are we just being taken for a ride? You don't have to answer it now, really, but it's something I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I think it's just something to note that there is always an expectation in the planning system that when you actually go to build something, that there could be matters that come up that are different to what you expect. So that might be something like, oh, there's a feature on site that you hadn't anticipated, or actually when you're in construction, maybe the building materials aren't available anymore because merchants go out of business. So that is why then these types of applications did come about, because there's a recognition that there can be changes that happen, and that can be appropriate between when an application is approved to when it's actually being constructed. So you obviously have the variation of condition, you also have non-material amendments, and that is a recognition by the planning system that might be something that occurs. So I completely understand your frustrations with that. I guess it's recognized that that's something that that can occur, and it's appropriate to vary the original applications as recognized by those types of applications in those circumstances.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, I think it's fair to say there's been some challenges in delivery here, and I think that's putting it sort of relatively mildly. But the project team are working together to try and make sure that project is delivered, and some of these things have to happen to enable that reality to come forward and all the benefits of the scheme. So I think we can all, express maybe some frustrations or concerns about maybe where things have evolved from in terms of initial proposals. But in respect of what you've got in front of you now, it's gone through that detailed assessment that Katie's carried out in collaboration with the developer team and applicant team, and we're satisfied that that's acceptable in planning terms. So in terms of the process, you will have to consider this on its merits, not in respect of do we like it as much as maybe what we had at the first go around. And that I can appreciate that is a challenge for members and a source of frustration. But I think in fairness to the applicant team, they've really tried to resolve these problems now and find a way to deliver this project, which I think, across the board between members and officers, we want to see concluded and flourish.
Thank you, Joe. Do members, Councillor Reid,
do we know whether these changes affect the cost of the scheme, either up or down? Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to comment on the cost. So for planning, the kind of deliverable cost is not a material planning consideration, so it's not a question I've asked.
Any other final questions? Councillor Bryant.
Would it be possible to have one of the maps of the site back up again? Thank you. It's just really, as officers or perhaps the applicants, are you absolutely certain that you've squeezed every inch of panel out of that site for every possible roof on there? I mean, I don't know the site, but are the garages on there? You know, also, is there any possibility that rather than solar panels, the developers could look at solar tiles, which are in existence? That, you know, they are expensive, but they still exist and they're much more pleasant to the eye than solar panels. You know, and as I say, coming back to what Councillor Daly says, you know, certainly share that concern that we are as an authority looking to be eco-friendly all the time, and the loss of that many panels is quite serious. And as I say, coming back to the point that Councillor Ninley made about the fact that there's no battery storage, so that basically that we're going to be feeding back into the national grid. I doubt very much if this authority will get any money back from that, but it just seems to be a loss when we have this splendid passive house project, which came up under the last administration and this administration took up willingly, except it's not quite as passive as we would like it to be. But it's really on the roofs. That was that splendid image you had. I think it showed everything in my go, including the pavilion and everything with the green area. But I mean, it doesn't matter because you get the point. You know, basically, have you found everything, every little bit of space that's possible? That's what I mean. It's academic. It's just really, you know, in terms of the intensity of getting them on every single south, north. Is it north facing? I don't know. I haven't got solar panels on. South facing. You're right. Of course it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, these things are.
Yeah, it's certain. Oh, there's an idea. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it doesn't appear that my screen is wanting to share. I have pressed it a few times, but I guess I'll come back to your question and then hopefully it might pop up. But so we obviously what's before us to determine is whether the changes are acceptable. So we're not really in a position to be able to ask the applicant to start kind of squeezing anything else on. But what's before us is what we need to be considering. And I think what's really important to recognise, and what we've picked up in our report, is that if this had come in as the original application, would we have approved it? And yes, we would have done, because it's maintaining the passive house standard, although that's not a policy requirement. Obviously, that's been an ambition of the scheme. And it is still meeting that and actually far exceeding the requirement that's in our sustainable construction policy around reduction in CO2 above the building regulation standards. So with both of those elements in mind, had this been what was proposed originally, we would have approved that. And so that's the judgment we've made in this instance, is that yes, it is different, but we are still exceeding the policy standard. And the difficulty that we have is that this scheme is seeking to achieve beyond that. And because our policy does not require passive house, it does not require green roofs, it doesn't require that level of exceedance over that policy, we can't insist on anything above a 20%. So the fact we're getting 70-odd% is actually a gift and a benefit of the scheme. So we wouldn't be able to insist on anything more because we don't have a policy which requires us to do that. So, but yeah, as I say, the important thing is to bear in mind is that had this been proposed originally, we would have still recommended for approval.
Okay. Right. Now comes to invite the committee to debate the application. I think. Councillor Daly.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we've done this quite well and gone through it. That initial feeling of mine that we were losing something, actually, I think it's turned into a gain, really. And it is different, but the fact that we're continuing with the passive house and we've found a way forward, and it is a bloody good scheme, you know, and something it's important for us to continue supporting. So yeah, I'm happy to vote for this.
Councillor Hedgley.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we should not lose sight of the fact that we are the applicant. and Felixstowe Town Council have no objections, neither does ecology, neither does environmental protection. So I think on the whole, I would second the proposal.
Yeah. Councillor Nimble.
I'm really worried about this in that we've got a proposal here that significantly increase to those who have houses 1 to model 4, the running costs for them into the future by a considerable amount. I mean, in 2 cases, it's being reduced by to a third of what it was intended to be. It could have been addressed if the applicant had considered installing battery storage as well as solar gain. I share the concern that if you're going to build a passive house, vents are a part of the necessary design for that type of construction. And to be coming this late in the day, saying the reason this is going to be done because we're going to get vents in, I find very worrying that whoever approved the original design or how it got to the stage we are with driving past it every day and seeing the gardens are laid out, etc. And we're suddenly saying we're going to have to get vents through the roof. I just find the whole thing disturbing, and I'm not minded to support this particular change. I think they should come back with a much more beneficial change that would actually keep the low running cost to those houses that are going to be significantly higher in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nimbley. Councillor Hitchley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I can answer one of Councillor Nimbley's questions. Who agreed with this in the first place? Well, I'm the guilty person because I was on the committee then.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Day.
Can I propose that we vote that we accept this application as described by the officers?
You can, but we want to make sure that everyone's had their say. And I would just comment on battery storage. It's not quite as simple as all that because they cost money and don't last forever. So someone's going to be responsible for maintaining them afterwards. Yeah. Anyone else got any points they want to raise? Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, I do share the concerns of Councillor Smithson and Councillor Nimbley in how late these changes are being put into effect. I mean, I live more or less opposite the site, and quite frankly, it's been going on years, as we know. However, I do feel that we do need to get on with it, and the increase in the benefit in terms of the CO2 is something we need to look at. But quite frankly, you know, I'm concerned about the additional cost to potential residents of the entire cost line. But I'm inclined to agree it reluctantly.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think at that point we'll take Councillor Daly's recommendation then, seconded by Councillor Hedgley. Those in favour that we take the recommendation of the report. And those against? One against. And I think that counts for everyone, doesn't it? So we've got one against. Thank you very much. You want to take a break at any point, or are you happy to go on? We'll take a break for 5 minutes.
Please remain seated with microphones turned off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. We're back online.
Thank you, Agnes. Right, we'll now resume with agenda item 7, which who's gonna- Louise is going to present. No, no, that. No. Okay, you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the presentation relates to number 46, Priory Court in Nacton. The application seeks planning permission for the replacement of the front door and steps with the installation of handrails on the steps to the front and rear doors and along the driveway. The application is before Planning Committee for determination as the applicant is a member of East Suffolk Council. So the application site is located within Priory Park, a residential park dwelling development in Nacton. The application property is of static caravan construction and is positioned on a ground level lower than the road. The driveway and the front garden slope downwards towards the dwelling. The proposed additions are to be sited to the north and the south of the dwelling. This is the proposed south elevation. There is to be 2 galvanised handrails to both sides of the steps. Each rail is to be 1 metre in length and 900 millimetres high. Both handrails are to be fixed to the ground and not to the dwelling. The proposed north elevation. The galvanised handrail is to be fitted to the left side of the steps. The handrail is to be 1.6 metres in length and 900 millimetres high. The front door is to be replaced with a level access threshold, a white UPVC door, and the existing steps are to be replaced to provide better access for the occupants. And the proposed north elevation, so the galvanised handrail is to be along the length of the driveway. This rail is to be 8.3 metres in length and 900 millimetres high. The material planning considerations for this, the design and appearance of the proposed works, the impact on the appearance of the site and the surrounding area. The proposed works are limited to accessibility improvements to the existing dwelling and would not materially alter the relationship between the application property and the neighbouring dwellings. No objections have been received. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions as outlined in the report. The standard 3-year time limit condition, as well as to be carried out in accordance with the approved plans. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. Members, do you have any points of clarification? Questions? Do we have any public speakers on anything here? No.
So any questions, any clarifications, no, so none?
No.
Any questions?
No, no questions.
Debate?
So debate then. Whose ward is this in? Do you want to debate the matter or raise any points?
I wouldn't say debate. I mean, quite frankly, this is a area full of more elderly people, and this seems a very sensible solution.
Yeah. So, Councillor Niven.
I think my point would be this is very much the type of adaptation we would do ourselves for a resident whose mobility is impaired, and I think it's perfectly acceptable. Move to a vote. I propose we accept it.
So do we have a second? Councillor Reid. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, members. So we go on to item 8 then. Present that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, item 8. So the presentation relates to the south view of Lower Road in Westerfield. The application seeks planning permission for a rear extension and the conversion of an existing integral garage into a habitable space. The application is before Planning Committee for determination, as the application property is owned by a member of East Suffolk Council staff. The site location plan. The application property is accessed via Lower Road. The proposed extension is sited to the rear of the dwelling, with the conversion of the garage visible from the principal elevation. And an aerial photograph to show the wider context of the site, including the open field opposite the property, with limited opportunity for overlooking or wider visual impact arising from the proposal. And some photographs from the rear garden to show the white-clad detached garden outbuilding, which is to be demolished, as well as to demonstrate the relationship with the neighbouring dwelling to the east. The proposed extension projects a modest 2.1 metres from the rear wall of the dwelling. The proposal includes the removal of doors to the kitchen extension, which is to be replaced with a window. And photographs from the principal elevation, which can be seen from the road. The integral garage is to be converted to form a bedroom. So to summarise, the application seeks permission for the conversion of an existing integral garage to form an additional bedroom with ensuite facilities, with the garage door to be replaced with 2 windows, a modest rear extension with the large detached garden outbuilding to be removed. The elevations as existing materials include a brown facing brickwork with white UPVC windows. And the elevations as proposed, the proposed external materials would match or complement those of the existing dwelling, including white UPVC windows and facing brickwork to match the existing property. The rear extension would have a flat roof with a dark grey finish. And the existing and proposed floor plans also showing the detached building to be demolished. The proposed plan shows the modest extension to bedroom 3 and associated internal reordering to the rear of the dwelling. The conversion of the garage creates an additional bedroom, bringing the dwelling to a 4-bedroom property. The material planning considerations for this application include the design, scale and appearance of the proposed works, the impact on the character and appearance of the site and surrounding area, impact on neighbouring residential amenity, including privacy and outlook. No objections have been received, although 1 neighbouring letter of support has been received. And so the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions as outlined in the report, with the standard 3-year commencement condition and development to be carried out in accordance with the approved plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of clarification? Or Councillor Byatt?
Yes, clarification really. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to ask this question. I'll still ask it. Do we know if this is being carried out under the Sizewell scheme in terms of offering up part of your home to be converted into accommodation for Sizewell workers, just out of interest? Thank you.
It is not that I know of, no.
We've got no public speakers, so any further questions generally from members? So we can debate the application then. Councillor Headley, is that in your patch?
It is in my patch, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This is quite a modest change in actual fact, and the design does not unduly affect the road or the area or the environment, and it's quite acceptable as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else got any comments then to make? Would anyone like to propose then? That was Councillor Hedgley, seconded by Councillor Smithson. Those in favour of accepting the recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Well, we have now concluded the business on the agenda. I'd like to thank everyone who has attended and participated today. I will now ask the meeting host to end the live feed. Please can members and officers keep their microphones muted.
Thank you, Chair.